criteria for force powers, I link back to the movies. I have Yoda looking kind of winded when he lifts an X-wing out of the swamp. So that's kind of my thought on limiting the actual strength. Secondly, we've got Han saying in A New Hope, it's just a lot of simple tricks and nonsense. If you are throwing Star Destroyers around, it's going to be hard to explain that as simple tricks or nonsense. Also, I try to kind of bring a little more focus in the Hand of Thrawn duology, where I have Mara explaining to Luke how you can use the Force for power or for guidance, and one interferes with the other. So the wise Jedi limits his power as much as he can so as to have the guidance, and that's where I put Yoda in that category. He can lift an X-wing, he won't do anything much more powerful because he preferred to listen to the Force. So that's kind of where I balance things. Other authors, there's sometimes you get competitions where my Luke is better than your Luke. And that can get kind of out of hand in this kind of creeping way that the editors might not even really notice until, wait, we're half a mile past the Elks Lodge by now, we're supposed to be there. So I try to limit the Force to the Jedi to that kind of level.
Thank you.
So this is for Tim. Obviously, you gave us some of the best EU characters. Thrawn's been mentioned, Mara Jade's been mentioned. You very much shepherded Mara Jade, her early life, her courtship with Luke, her life with Luke, and things like that. What was it like for you to then allow the end of her life to be done by somebody else?
Tim is still mad at you for that.
Disappointed, Shelley, not mad. First of all, start out with, I don't own Mara Jade or Thrawn or anybody else. Lucasfilm owns everything, it's their property, they can do anything they want, and rightfully so. George created it, he's got last say over anything that happens. My objections to Mara's death were not just because she was my character, but because she's a very useful character, it's hard to replace her. The method of her death seemed wrong to me. I had similar problems with Chewbacca's death, so it's not just Mara. And it's also it seems to me that Star Wars is not about killing off major characters. Again, came back to the movies. If major or second-tier characters were dying in Star Wars universe, Han would have died, or Lando or Wedge. The fact that all of them made it out alive gives me a feel for what I consider the flavor of Star Wars. Now that being said, there are a lot of authors and there are a lot of readers who want everybody to be at risk. My philosophy is rather than make the reader sweat over who's going to die, I would prefer to make them sweat over they are in a really serious mess right now. How are they going to find their way out of it? Or think their way or fight their way out of it? So that's... I never liked reading stories or books when I was younger where the main character or a main character died, and that just kind of, call me stunted, but that's kind of the way it is. So, as to allowing it, Lucasfilm owns her, and actually I didn't even know at the time they were going to do that. Shelley finally clued me in a couple of months before the book came out because I asked her a direct question.
I was getting ready to tell him, and he found out. He taught me a big lesson.
Well, someone on my tour had said there are rumors going on, and I blithely said, well, usually they let the author know when something's like that's going to happen.
That was definitely my bad. And I also just going to throw in some things about this death thing. Interestingly, just a few little anecdotal pieces. Interestingly, when we were deciding to kill off somebody and then who to kill off in New Jedi Order, in Vector Prime, George told us we could kill Han. That has changed since, but at the time, we were allowed to. The only ones he said we couldn't kill were Luke and Leia, and but I refused to kill Han. So we don't enjoy killing people. It does get hard as the EU continues, and for example, the kids get older. to focus on so many characters who all become major, and then none of them are at risk because they all become too important. But a little funny thing, this is funny to me, is we were first going to kill Jason, even though I love him. And then we were told we had to kill Anakin, and I suspect that's because they didn't want a confusion between the two Anakins running around at the same time. I don't know for sure. But we had to kill Anakin, but everybody sat around saying, but Anakin isn't much of a character. Who's going to care? So we made a point of building him up in the books until then. So then he dies, and man, the outcry was like, how could you do this? So I call that success. I think we did it right, you know. And I'm tired of killing people. I don't want to kill people. But if somebody dies, we have a problem. We said nobody major is going to be killed in Fate of the Jedi. Somebody is killed, and it's not somebody we consider that major, but because we care and we want people to care, no death should be. We shouldn't ever throw away a death. It's not, you know. So you've got to care.